My name is Lydia, I'm 36 years old, living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I used to believe that silence was the best way to keep a family from falling apart. For the past 3 years, I've been transferring $1,745 every month to cover the mortgage on the house my mother lives in. That house sits in the suburbs of Greensboro, where I grew up, where old memories still linger, and where now, I'm no longer welcome. I'm not someone who seeks attention. Everything I did for the family was quiet: paying the electricity bills, fixing the roof after a storm, replacing the fridge when the old one leaked for a month and no one moved a finger. No one asked me to do it, but if I didn't, no one would. I used to think that if I helped long enough, maybe they'd start to see me as part of them. But then last Christmas came, and everything collapsed. Every year, by the end of November, my mother, Judith, would send out a group email to plan the holiday. Who brings what dish? Who handles the tree, the Christmas music, the gift schedule? That year, I got nothing. I assumed they forgot, so I waited patiently. One day, I opened the shared Google Drive folder we usually use to organize gifts, recipes, and even that year's playlist. It was gone. Every link now led to the same cold message: access denied. I texted my younger sister, Sarah? A simple question. I can't find the Christmas folder, did you take it down? No response. It wasn't until that evening that I received a text from my mother. Just one line: you must be busy this year, don't worry about Christmas. No checking in, no regret. Just a polite rejection, crafted to avoid confrontation, but to me it sounded like a steel door slamming shut. For good. Didn't cry. Crying is for things you don't expect, but me? I had a feeling. Still, when I read that message, I sat motionless on a kitchen chair for almost 10 minutes, like something inside me had just cracked. I didn't get angry. I simply realized one thing: while I was still making monthly mortgage payments, they were hanging garlands, wrapping presents, and silently crossing my name off their list. 2 years ago, I arrived late on Christmas Eve because of a client meeting that ran until 8 p.m. I brought a box of warm homemade gingerbread cookies and gifts for everyone. When I walked in, no one even looked up. Dinner was already served, every seat taken. I stood by the sink, eating off a paper plate. Someone muttered, "Oh, she remembered to show up." Everyone laughed. I never found out who said it, but it doesn't matter now. Back then, I made excuses. The holidays are stressful, I told myself. Maybe they didn't mean to forget I don't eat smoked meat. Maybe they just overlooked the mashed potatoes I bring every year, always gone by the end of the night. But now, I know better. Nothing about this was random. It was a decision. And I wasn't part of the vote. The next morning, I got up early and opened my December budget spreadsheet. Every line was clear. Mortgage: $1,745. Auto payment scheduled for the 3rd of each month. 36 months without fail. In that house, they hosted birthdays, small weddings, even my niece's graduation party. On hardwood floors I paid to have installed, but in all those moments, not once did anyone think to save me a seat at the table. I didn't cancel the payments right then, but for the first time, I stared at that number and asked myself a question I had never dared to voice. Why am I paying for a life I'm not even invited to be part of? That evening, I didn't turn on YouTube for another cheesy Christmas comedy. I sat in my apartment, quiet, treeless, undecorated, and let the silence settle. But this time, the silence wasn't loneliness. It was a reckoning. And I heard it loud and clear. I started paying closer attention to the empty spaces, not just in messages, but in the way they talked about me, or more accurately, the way they avoided mentioning me at all. A week after my mother's text, I checked the old group chat that used to include me, Sarah, our cousin Dylan, and Lexi, the one that was always buzzing during the holidays. The group had been renamed the Core Four. My name was no longer in the member list. I tried opening Holiday Central, the chat we used last year when we argued for hours over which song should open Christmas Eve. That group had vanished too. I searched my inbox for past invites, gift fund reminders, anything at all. But everything was blank. It didn't feel like I'd been forgotten. It felt like I'd been erased. While I was sitting still, my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Lexi just posted a new story, home for the holidays. I opened it. A long dining table covered in a red cloth. Glowing yellow lights, people laughing, wine glasses raised. I recognized the chandelier above the table. It was the one I ordered from New York and personally drove down 2 years ago, because my mother had said the local options looked cheap. At the center of the photo was my mother, Judith, pouring wine for Lexi, her hand gently resting on Sarah's shoulder. No one seemed to notice the phone recording, or maybe they just didn't care. The caption underneath, written by Sarah, read, "Family is where the heart always finds its way back." I zoomed into every corner of the table. There wasn't a single empty chair. That night, I pulled out a box of old cards from the drawer. Cards I'd kept because I believed one day I would look back and feel like I truly belonged somewhere. To our beloved Lydia. Thanks for always being the reliable one. Couldn't have pulled this off without you. But now, reading them felt hollow. They were like copy-paste messages, repeated every year, signed, sent, and forgotten. I started retracing every Christmas. The year I was 30, when I bought a silver flatware set for the party. My mother said, "Oh, Lydia, that must have been expensive. But well, since you've already bought it, let's use it." The year I was 32, when I stayed up until nearly 2 a.m. decorating 120 gingerbread cookies for the church gathering. When I arrived, they were dumped into a nameless basket, and my mother smiled at the guests. "Sarah made these, so talented." I used to think, well, I'm the older one, let it go. I told myself that as long as they were happy, it didn't matter. But each little memory, when strung together, turned into evidence. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a deliberate reshaping of my presence to fit their comfort. One evening after work, I stopped by the grocery store to pick up a few things. As I walked past the holiday display section, I saw a girl, maybe 12 years old, choosing ornaments for the Christmas tree. Beside her stood her mother, listening to her daughter excitedly talk about decorating her very own tree this year. I didn't know them, but those words tightened something in my chest. I realized I had never had a Christmas that was fully mine. As a child, I was the quiet one who had to give up the solo angel part to Sarah. As an adult, I was the one who paid, planned, drove, but was always treated like nice to have but not essential. Back at my apartment, I placed my grocery bag on the kitchen counter and reached for a glass of water when the phone rang. A video call. From Lexi. I was mildly surprised. I answered. Her face appeared on screen. The background clearly my mother's living room. She smiled and said, "Lydia, I just wanted to ask, are you planning to send your usual appetizer this year? Mom said it's not necessary, but I thought if you made it." I cut in, calmly, "Are you asking about the dish or just checking if I plan to show up?" Lexi paused. I saw a flicker of confusion, then defensiveness in her eyes. "What do you mean? We all agreed this year should be lighter. Less tension." I said nothing. I just looked at her. After a few seconds of silence, she quietly ended the call. No Merry Christmas, no apology. I sat down on the floor, back against the wall, watching the wall clock tick slowly. The feeling wasn't abandonment. It was something colder. Something far more calculated. It had been revalued, downgraded. Far below what my own heart had ever allowed. I couldn't sleep at all the night after Lexi's call. One sentence kept looping in my head. We all agreed. We? Since when did we no longer include me? Around 3 a.m., I reopened Instagram, combing through every trace. Dylan's story had already disappeared, but one photo remained on Lexi's page. The entire family gathered around the table. Red wine, roasted turkey, glowing candles. Beneath it was a comment from my mother. Judith. Nothing like a peaceful Christmas with those truly connected. I scrolled down and spotted a comment from a user named Becca_N_craft, Lexi's college friend. So glad the tough decision was made. The party looks amazing. Tough decision? I tapped to expand the thread and found a vague but telling exchange. A relative asked, "Is everyone okay? Feels like someone's missing." Sarah replied with a half-smiling emoji and the message, "Sometimes you have to do what's best for the group." I sat up straight. My chest tightened. There was no doubt anymore. They had discussed it. Maybe not in a formal meeting, but the decision was made, and I was erased. Me. The one still paying the mortgage on the very house they were laughing in. I opened my computer and pulled up every financial document I had. The mortgage agreement from 3 years ago. Signed when my mother had just retired and was denied a loan due to unstable income. She called me while I was in Dallas on a business trip. I remember her exact words. "I just need you to sign, so the bank feels more secure. I'll take care of everything else." I believed her. How could I not? She was my mother. I signed the papers without reading them closely. Now, staring at the document, it felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over me. I was the co-signer, equally responsible under the law, but the property title? Only one name, Judith A. Bishop. I searched my email for the bank's confirmation notices, then cross-referenced every transaction. The refrigerator I paid for last April, $1,370. The exterior repaint, in September? $2,600. The gray leather sofa my mother said looked like a waiting room couch but later raved about to her friends? $3,880. All from my account. And every time it came up they'd say, "Sarah has such great taste," or "Lexi really picked the right color." I was never credited. I opened my personal drive, where I had carefully archived every utility bill, property tax statement, maintenance schedule, and mortgage receipt. Each one had a date and a transaction ID. That house didn't function because they were a well-oiled unit. It functioned because I was the invisible engine keeping it running. I clicked into an old folder, where I'd saved the design plans for the kitchen remodel. As I scrolled to the bottom, something new caught my eye. A file uploaded 6 weeks ago by Sarah's account. Holiday budget summary. I opened it. The header read, "Financial contributions, exclude Lydia." I read it 3 times. The breakdown was clear. Dylan was in charge of gifts for the kids. Lexi handled desserts. Sarah covered the live band for Christmas Eve, and at the bottom, in small, cold text, "Do not include Lydia, to avoid tension." Mom agreed. I felt my heart drop. I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded. Deliberately. Systematically. And I had no idea. While I was still covering December's mortgage like every year before, I left my desk and stepped onto the balcony. The night air was brutal. The wind slapped my face, like a truth I'd been avoiding. I didn't cry. I had no tears left for things that were now unmistakably clear. But I also wasn't the woman who would nod and stay silent anymore. I returned to my desk, opened a new folder and named it Exit Plan. I began dragging in files. Bills. Contracts. Screenshots. Payment confirmations. I stuck a note beside my monitor. If they erased me from the family, I'll erase myself from their burden. On the morning of December 21st, I made coffee like usual, except this time my hands were steady. No more just wait a few more days. No more maybe they'll come around. I opened my laptop, launched the banking app, and slowly typed in my password like it was a sacred ritual. Under auto payments, there it was. Crenshaw Mortgage Services, $1,745. Scheduled for December 23rd. I hovered over cancel recurring payment. One click. no second thoughts, no confirmation. And just like that, it vanished. As if it was never my duty to begin with. I stood, poured the rest of my coffee, and looked out the window. North Carolina was wrapped in fog, but inside I had never felt clearer. I told no one. No text to my mother. No warning email to Sarah. This silence wasn't surrender. It was a boundary. That afternoon, I reviewed the utility bills. The internet was still under my name, same for Greensboro City Power, gas heating, and the homeowner's insurance. All things I once said were just to give Mom peace of mind, and she never argued. I logged into each account, navigated to service termination, and selected the cancel date. December 24th, Christmas Eve. I took screenshots of every confirmation email, saved them into the freshly updated exit plan folder. When done, I sat back and exhaled. Like, I'd just packed up a home that no longer felt like mine. I knew they wouldn't notice right away. They were used to everything just working. Lights on, heat flowing, Wi-Fi steady. As if the house maintained itself. And that's what hurt the most. They never once stopped to ask who was keeping things running. That evening, I stopped by a local bookstore and bought a moss green leather journal. On the first page, I wrote, "Freedom isn't leaving. It's no longer being held by one-sided obligation." I taped the October water bill onto the next page as a marker. The final month I contributed without acknowledgement. December 23rd came and went without incident. I worked remotely, completed the quarterly report for finance. At the end of the day, just as I shut my laptop, a message popped up. "Dylan added you to Bishop Family Chat." I froze. Inside the chat, Lexi had posted a photo of their almost finished dinner setup, with the caption, "Just need a touch more golden light." My mother replied underneath, "Must be the bulbs. Strange how dim they seem this year." I let out a small laugh. Light? Just wait until tomorrow night. On the evening of the 24th, I didn't do anything special. I made potato soup, lit a cinnamon candle in the kitchen, and revisited my digital folder. I checked each email, every service now showed status. Cancelled. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt light. Like I'd restored justice to a place where I once thought it didn't matter. Around 6:15 p.m. my phone buzzed, a text from Dylan, "Is something wrong with the power? Is the whole block out?" Seconds later, "Sarah, Lydia, do you know what's going on? The house lost power right before dinner." A minute later, my mom called. I stared at Mom on the screen, let my finger rest on decline for 5 seconds, then let the call fade away. More messages followed. "Lexi, did you really do this?" "Sarah, everyone's freaking out." And then, the final one from my mother. "If you did this, I'll never forgive you." I didn't respond. I didn't need their forgiveness. I just needed them to understand. Comfort comes at a cost. And someone's been paying. I got up, opened the window, and let the cold air flood the room. Outside, the streets were eerily quiet. This Christmas didn't feel sad. Just different. And that difference was mine to own. I had stopped waiting for something that was never coming. Acknowledgement. Back at my desk, my phone buzzed one last time. "Lexi? Mom's crying. Dad called the power company. They said the account's in your name. Did you really do this?" I read it. Flipped the phone face down. No explanation needed. For once, my silence had weight. On Christmas night, around 7 p.m., while I sipped Merlot by candlelight at my kitchen table, my phone lit up with a flood of messages. "Sarah, power's out. Mom's freaking out." "Dylan, internet's down. We can't reach the live band." "Lexi, was it you, Lydia? Please don't tell me you actually..." I didn't reply. I set my wine glass down, turned on the radio to soft classical music, and curled into my armchair. Outside, snow began to fall. I wrapped myself in a thin blanket and let the world outside scramble in a darkness they never expected. An hour later, my phone rang. "Mom." I didn't touch it. 7 missed calls followed. Then, one final text. Short. Familiar. Almost comical in its predictability. "You really are the disgrace of this family." I read it without reacting. No sting, no anger. Just the numb familiarity of a cassette tape played too many times. I had heard enough. Now it was their turn. To hear themselves, in silence, and in the dark. At 9:18 p.m. an email came in from Olivia. "My cousin, the only one who checked on me last year when I had the flu," subject line, "You need to hear this." Inside, a single audio file and one sentence. "I don't agree with how they treat you. They think I don't notice. But I recorded it." I put on headphones. The first voice was Sarah, tense, bitter. "I told you. She always makes things heavy, like she's the backbone of everything." Then Dylan, scoffing. "We only let her name be on the accounts because her credit score's high, not because we trust her." Then my mother, calm and tired, as if reciting something well rehearsed. "I never really saw Lydia as part of the family. She's just convenient. Always showing up on time, paying on time. But no one remembers someone just for paying the bills." A long pause. Then laughter. No pushback. No defense. I took off the headphones. Not because I was shocked. Because I wasn't. I had always suspected. Now I had proof. I opened my exit plan folder and created a new subfolder, audio proof. The file saved as convenient_not_family MP3. It sounded like a brand. But really, it was just the truth. By midnight, I placed my phone on the table and turned on silent mode. Outside, faint fireworks welcomed Christmas. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't scroll, didn't seek apologies, because I knew they wouldn't come. My apartment remained bright, warm, and quiet. Unlike the house in Greensboro, where candles might be lit, flashlights might flicker, and wine might be poured in darkness, here, no one needed me to be the background to their comfort. At 1 a.m., Olivia texted again. I couldn't stomach what they said. "You deserve better." I replied with just one sentence. "I know. And I'll make sure they know too." Not with arguments. Not with blame. But by letting the truth speak for itself. With that audio, the bills, the records, I had everything. And soon, they would be forced to face the foundation they'd been standing on all this time. The one person they thought they could discard at will. I closed my eyes, letting the music drift in. Tonight, I wasn't left out of the table. I walked away, carrying the light. And left behind one question they'd all be asking, come morning. If Lydia's gone, who's keeping everything together now? On the morning of December 25th, I woke up earlier than usual. No alarms, no calls reminding me about breakfast. No one expected me to make French toast, like every other year. My apartment was completely silent, and to me that was the most soothing sound after a long year suffocated by unspoken obligations. I made coffee, opened my laptop, pulled up the exit plan folder, and clicked on the section I titled Impact. There I had sorted everything into 3 separate bundles: financial, legal, personnel. Each file was clearly labeled and easy to navigate. Electric bills, property tax declarations, furniture receipts, and most prominently, the audio file titled convenient_not_family MIT3. The first email I sent was to Mr. Richard Foreman, Director of Human Resources at the bank where Dylan worked. Subject line: Report regarding ethical and financial misconduct, Dylan Bishop. I didn't include any harsh language, just facts. For the past 3 years, Dylan and the family had used property listed under my name for personal gain, without financial transparency. I attached account statements showing I had been paying for housing, utilities, and lastly, the audio clip where he scoffed about letting her be on the paperwork because she has good credit. The second email went to the Winterlight Foundation, a charity board where my mother, Mrs. Judith Bishop, was publicly referred to as the inspiring woman behind our community drives. I had anonymously donated for 2 consecutive years over $6,000 from my personal account at her request. In the email, I clarified the true source of the contributions, attaching donation receipts and bank transactions, ended with a sentence: "I am not requesting a refund, I only ask that my name be properly attributed, or at the very least, separated from these fabrications." The final email I sent to Valerie Price, an editor at the Charlotte Gazette, whom I had once worked with on an article about housing for low-income families. I sent only one thing: the audio file. No commentary. No agenda. I let the truth speak for itself. 30 minutes later, the first response came from Valerie. "We are reviewing the content. If verified, this could be a serious matter regarding the Bishop family's public reputation." That afternoon, I shut my laptop and went out to get a cheese baguette and a latte. When I returned, an official notice was already posted on the Winterlight Foundation's website. Due to unclear funding origins during the 2020-2023 period, we are temporarily removing Mrs. Judith Bishop's name from our list of honorary representatives, pending review. I wasn't surprised. I just felt justice. A quiet kind of justice I once thought only existed in movies. Around 4 p.m., Olivia texted, "What did you just do? Dylan's been called into HR." An hour later, Dylan called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Lydia, have you lost your mind? You went public with family matters? I could lose my job." I listened, then deleted it. He called it family matters. I called it the truth. And the truth doesn't need permission to exist. My mother stayed silent the whole evening. No messages, no accusations. But I knew she saw it. I knew she was livid in the dark. Not just because she was humiliated, but because for the first time, I wasn't there to clean up the mess. Around 8 p.m., Valerie emailed again. "We're considering an article about the truth behind ideal families during the holidays. If you're open to sharing, we'd love to hear more about your role and how you quietly carried the weight." I didn't respond right away. Not because I was afraid, but because I was deciding whether now was the time to finally tell my story. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Not everyone wants the truth. But eventually everyone has to live with the consequences of ignoring it." 2 days after Christmas, I woke up with a clear, cold sense of calm. I no longer cared what people said behind my back. I no longer counted missed calls or angry messages. I made a cup of black tea, sat down at my desk, opened my laptop and started typing. No warm greetings. No dear mom. I've been cut off from this family, so I'm withdrawing from its finances. I hold no further responsibility for the house in Greensboro. No more utility bills under my name, no more mortgage liabilities. I'm no longer the invisible engine that kept things running without recognition. And I'm no longer the silent wallet funding parties I was never invited to. I attached a single PDF. A line-digit breakdown of every expense I'd paid from 2020 until now, including roof repairs after the storm, a new heating unit, last winter's utility bills, every detail accounted for. Next to each line was a clear note: not requesting reimbursement, no expectations, for record only. I titled the email, "Termination of Financial Responsibility." Recipients: Judith Bishop, with copies to Dylan, Sarah, Lexi, and Olivia. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't want one. The next morning I went to the Charlotte branch of the bank where I held my main account, the same place I'd signed on to co-finance the house for my mother. A young woman named Cassidy greeted me. Her smile was professional, but her eyes flicked to the thick folder I carried. I placed it on the desk. I'd like to transfer full responsibility for the loan to the primary borrower, Mrs. Judith Bishop. Here's the notarized request, her signed consent, and verification from an independent legal office. Everything is prepared. She blinked, hesitating slightly. Ms. Lydia, you understand that once this is signed, you'll no longer have access or authority over any aspect of this loan. I understand, I said evenly. And I don't need it. Cassidy carefully reviewed every document and signature. After about 15 minutes, she confirmed. It'll take 3 to 5 business days to update our records, but as of now, your legal obligations toward the loan are officially concluded. I signed one last line beneath the phrase, full financial responsibility transfer. As the pen left the paper, I felt something slip from around my chest. An invisible chain I'd worn for the past 3 years. No one walked me out of the branch. I didn't need anyone. I opened the door myself, stepped into the daylight, and let the winter wind brush my collar. Back home, I checked my phone. No surprise, my mother had called 3 times and left a voicemail over a minute long. I didn't listen, but I read the texts that followed. You're destroying everything I built. This can't be undone. Do you even understand the consequences? I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new email. This one was addressed to my personal attorney, a woman I met last year at a financial independence seminar for women. I wrote, requesting consultation on next steps to fully protect personal assets, including privacy, reputation, and avoidance of any unnecessary civil entanglements with family third parties. I never thought I'd need a lawyer to guard my boundaries from my own blood. But today, I didn't feel defeated. I felt clear-headed, because finally, I'd accepted what I'd spent a lifetime delaying. Love doesn't come with obligation if there's no acknowledgment. That afternoon, Olivia texted me. I just walked out of the church where everyone's gathered, people are talking, Mom says you betrayed the family. I replied. I didn't betray anyone, I just let go of the rope they kept tightening. I stood in front of the mirror and looked into my eyes. Gone was the girl desperate to please. All I saw was a woman who finally ended the exploitation. At the exact right moment. The first week of January passed in a kind of quiet I hadn't known since entering adulthood. No sudden phone calls, no accusatory texts, no requests like, "Can you help Mom with this one little thing?" or, "Sarah's short on her phone bill from last month, can you spot her?" Everything was silent. And to me, it wasn't an eerie emptiness. It was a breath of space. Each morning, I got up early, brewed my own coffee, and read a few chapters of books I'd never had time to open before. I walked around the park near my home, letting the winter chill sting my cheeks and the wind sweep through my hair, like it was rinsing away the years I'd spent as someone's convenient shadow. I started rewriting my personal financial plan, for the first time, just for me. One Saturday afternoon, as I was placing some dried lavender stems into a glass jar, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and froze. Olivia, my cousin, stood there holding a canvas bag, wearing a thin coat, eyes cast downward like she was wrestling something inside. I opened the door. No words, no smile. She stepped in, set the bag on the table, and pulled out a tin of ginger cookies. The kind I've loved since childhood but never once received from anyone. I made them myself, Olivia said softly. Wasn't sure if you still liked them. I nodded slightly and invited her to sit by the fireplace. The room was quiet for a few minutes, the only sound being the soft crackle of burning logs. I needed to say something, she began. I heard everything they said, at the party and after it all blew up. And I felt ashamed. I stayed silent. I let her continue. I used to think, staying out of it meant I wasn't doing anything wrong. But my silence was part of the same cycle. She looked at me. Truly looked, not avoiding. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner. I know you stayed quiet for years thinking that was how you kept the family together. But no one has the right to turn kindness into a condition they can exploit. Something softened in me. Not from pain, but because someone had finally said what I'd been waiting over a decade to hear. That acknowledgment doesn't come from gratitude. It comes from understanding. And today, Olivia gave me that. We talked for hours. Not about the drama. Not about who said what or who defended whom. We talked about what it was like to grow up in a family where roles were handed out like scripts. Who's the successful child? Who's the one to rescue? Who's the sacrificial one? I used to believe my role was fixed. Now I know I can leave the stage anytime I choose. Before leaving, Olivia turned to ask, "If Grandma ever asks why you don't come around anymore, what should I tell her?" I didn't need long to answer. I simply said, "Tell her I'm still here, I'm just not waiting for an invitation." After she left, I stood on the balcony, looking out over the red brick buildings in the evening light. I thought about every Christmas past, every meal I cooked and ate alone, every gift I signed from all of us because Mom said, "It'll feel warmer that way." Those memories no longer felt like weight. They were just evidence of someone who once loved, and is now learning to love herself. I don't need them to call and apologize. I don't need a letter explaining everything. I don't need to go back. Because for the first time, I'm no longer standing outside, hoping to be let in. I've built myself a home, quiet enough that it doesn't need Christmas bells at the door. I opened the fridge, took out leftover pasta, poured a small glass of wine. And as I sat at the table with just one chair, I realized, sometimes, healing doesn't come from a gesture of forgiveness. It comes from the moment you no longer feel the need to be accepted in order to live according to your own worth. Lydia's story proves that sacrifice holds no value when it's treated as a default obligation. When family ties are buried beneath silence, exploitation, and neglect, walking away isn't betrayal, it's a brave act of reclaiming your self-worth. In real life, if you've carried your family on your back and still been treated as disposable, remember, you don't need an invitation to exist. You have the right to walk away, draw new boundaries, and build a life where everything you give is seen and valued. What do you think about Lydia's decision? Was she too harsh, or was she simply taking back what she deserved? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.